Hello and welcome to the first and premiere episode of Bulls Parolees and a Producer. My name is Billy Cooper. I am the showrunner and executive producer of Bulls and Parolees, the long-running Animal Planet series. I am joined by Miss Tia Torres, the owner-operator of Villalobos Rescue Center, and lead talent on Bulls and Parolees. I don't know, what do we call it? Do we lead cast member? We don't. Every time if we ever tried to call you the star, you would smack us across the face.
It was forbidden.
Yeah, you're not the star.
Nope.
No.
Nope.
We are also joined by Rasha Drashkovich, the founder, CEO, and owner of 44 Blue Productions, based in Los Angeles. Rash, what's up? How you doing?
Hello, everybody. Good to be with you.
And that's the first time I've actually realized how to pronounce his last name.
Drashkovich?
Yeah, I thought it was like Drakovich, like Dracula.
Rash, remind us again, what's the back? It's Croatian.
It's Serbian. My parents are from Belgrade, but the name, when we go out to dinner, it's Drake. Okay, it's just a lot easier because there's 12 letters and, you know.
Reservation for Drake.
Oh, got it.
My first job as a sportscaster, they changed my name to Roger Dupree. Just so little trivia there, just so you know.
When you had the mustache.
Yeah.
Okay, so on this show, we are going to be diving into every episode of Bulls and Parolees, all 266 of them.
Oh my God!
But not this particular episode. This particular episode is our introduction to the show. For those of you listening or watching, we just wanted to give everybody the background and the story of the origin of Bulls and Parolees. So, Tia, let's talk about how you got quote unquote discovered. You know, what was your life back then like? Did you want a reality show? Like, how did that all happen?
I believe it surrounded by a couple of F-bombs that I.
Oh, by the way, we can go blue. We're good. It's 44 blue. We can curse.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah. Why can't we curse?
Throughout as Bulls and Parolees evolved and became a children's show somehow, I stopped cussing.
Well, still.
It's like when we first started this show, we were cussing and F this and fuck that and cigarettes hanging out of our mouths and drinking beer and all this crap. And then they were just like, no, I mean, kids watch this show now. I'm like, how the hell did that happen? So then we just stopped.
Right.
You know, became like Nickelodeon or something.
Okay, fine.
So,
but still.
But it all started with crime. Basically.
No, but I mean, like the origin. I mean, you were living up in what is called the high desert part of Southern California, very remote. And how does the word get out that you were running a pit bull rescue?
Crime. I told you, my life is surrounded by crime and criminals. Everything about it. That's what got us noticed. Been running the Villalobos Rescue Center since somewhere in the 90s. I don't like to think back that far. And how did I get into criminals? I'm trying to remember that far back. Wow. That means my life is that pathetic that I cannot think of a time where I liked a guy that had not committed a crime. But somewhere along the way, we started having, guys that had been in and out of prison and started working with the dogs, and it just kind of paired together. They saw a lot of themselves in the dogs, and they were, it was a great harmony between the two.
And then at one point there was a newspaper article done about you guys, that sort of sparked attention.
Yeah, it was through LA Weekly magazine.
For everybody who doesn't know, LA Weekly is basically a free magazine they give out in coffee shop, a free newspaper they give out in coffee shop.
That just made me feel so much better.
I think it's important for people to know.
Well, when they voted me one of the 10 most important people of Los Angeles, now I know I was really not. I was just like some 10 most important people in the coffee shop or something. So, but that's how it started. Every year they voted for like the 10 most important people in LA.
And then that led to people sort of noticing you and your business and your work with the dogs, and somebody magically approaches you and said, "Hey, you should be on a reality show."
Yeah, we got a lot of offers, actually, quite a few. And I was just like, "Fuck no!" Like, no. See, back then, speaking to the king of reality TV right here, back then reality TV was like a joke. I mean, right? That's kind of. I mean, I'm asking the right, Rasha?
Yeah, I mean, back then they were really. It was before the Duck Dynasty kind of Kardashian explosion, but it was a lot of train wreck stuff. People were still calling it documentaries, non-scripted. But then once reality took off and these, Honey Boo Boos and the rest of them started hitting, it like the genre just exploded.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I just remember when I got asked back then, I was like, no, it's embarrassing. I would never want a reality show.
Yeah.
And then the well ran dry as far as donations. And so I would like to say that the free box lunches that the local church was giving me and the kids to eat, it was a guilt trip for me because I never stepped foot in a church. But it was more like a desperation thing. Like we had nothing to feed the animals.
So at that point, someone who approaches you, an independent producer, he says, I want to shoot a sizzle reel, which for everybody who doesn't know is basically like a movie trailer version of what they think the show is, what the show could be.
Yeah, he was actually a student in my dog training class.
Okay.
And Mikey D.
Yeah.
And said, hey, let me just film you guys doing your thing. And I'm like, I don't care. You can go for it.
And then so Rasha, so this is where where 44 Blue comes sort of into the picture after, so how is 44 Blue brought into Tia's world? How does that happen?
Well, crime. Like Tia said.
It all goes back to the crime.
The crime.
The crime.
We were doing a show called Lockup on MSNBC. Mm-hmm. So like 300 episodes all over the U.S. and the world looking at life behind bars and corrections, like the most definitive look at corrections ever recorded. And it was a very popular series. And it hit on themes that I was very attracted to, like redemption and second chances. And Tia and I talk about this all the time. Anybody who's ever had a chance to visit or be in a prison, everywhere you look, there's a story. What happened to you? What did you do? To get you in this situation. So by nature, the subject matter I was interested in, and then a producer came to us with this sizzle, as you described it, and it was like a what? Tia does what? And it was pit bulls and parolees. I mean, it was just like, oh, I've got to see this. And we were fortunate to get a scout trip up to Agua Dulce and to see the rescue there, Villalobos Rescue. And it was an overwhelming emotional tsunami because number one, I'm more of a golden retriever type, walking into, 100 pit bulls and all these signs about, no fingers, don't lock the gate, do all this was something else. And then meeting Tia, introducing myself to Tia, and Tia saying the first thing, I don't know if you remember this, Tia, but you said, listen, something you got to know. I am not really into people or this TV thing. Yeah, I'm all about the dogs. So, that's how it's got to be. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. We're off to a flying start. And it was just amazing because Tia's no bullshit. If we can swear here, Tia is as real as they get. And for a television producer, combining, the crime element of, how do you give parolees a second chance and, doing something for the first time where they're actually giving back to society or accomplishing something because dogs don't judge. And then looking at this malign breed of dog, pit bulls, where everybody kind of went like that, on top of the fact that Tia and her family were as unique as can be, it was like, this is brilliant. This is really I actually thought it's almost too good for television because some executive is going to screw this up, Wow.
Well, actually, Raj, a network executive sort of brings me to my next question. So, which networks did you guys ultimately? So you get the idea, you get the pitch. Raj, 44 Blues on board. Tia, you're on board. You're like begrudgingly, okay, we have to do the show. What were some of the networks you guys originally approached? Like, what was that? What was the pitching process like? How do you guys decide which networks?
Well, the one thing I thought was really interesting is that Rasha had me actually go to the pitches, what I thought was like, wow, that was kind of interesting. And I remember, if I'm not mistaken, most of them, if not all of them, now back in the day, I used to wear like really dark sunglasses, like blacked out. And I remember just like sitting back in the chairs with my, my arms crossed, just slumped down in my chair like, I am so fucking not into this. And I was just like the mean, angry person sitting in the corner. I remember doing that a lot.
Right. And Rosh, what was your impression? I mean, like in terms of pitches, how does this fit into the world?
No, it's one of the best pitch experiences I ever had, because I think, Tia, remember you brought which dog was it? Was it Rhino, or you brought one of your
Rocket? Maybe
no.
Oh,
probably Rhino, or could have been Lefty.
Lefty, and you can imagine, executives back in the day when we pitched in person, right? 3-piece suits, seen and heard it all. And here's Tia, giving them the evil eye, and then you've got Lefty there, kind of looking at them like, and you've got like, they do what?
He's stereotyping.
But saying like they didn't know what to make of it, and because it was scary. It was actually a scary pitch in the sense that network execs usually like things pretty neat and compact and fully developed, and if there's a success on television, they want obviously the companion to that success. It makes their job easy. This made their job scary, because how is this going to work? Like, are people going to watch Pit Bulls or Parolees, and with the whole thing? And so it really took an executive at Animal Planet. This was, again, one of those first things. Tia wanted to call it the underdog.
Oh, you guys are stepping on my questions. That was like way later.
Which I'll just jump around. Which was, I thought, a fantastic.
Have a whole rundown.
But you know what, Rasha? Do you remember, Rasha, the one? Okay, so this is the one pitch I remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was driving from Agua Dulce.
Yep.
So to Beverly Hills, LA,
sure.
That's a long drive.
Yeah.
Well, then you combine it with traffic, and I'll never forget. You were pitching at TLC. And I got caught in like gridlock traffic on the 405. And I'm driving like my hoopty Chevy van. Okay. And the thing's overheating. And I'm crying. I'm fucking just like, fuck this TV show bullshit. I was like fuming. And I'm looking at the time going, I'm never going to make it to this thing. So I'm pissed off. I have no air conditioning. So I'm rolling my windows down,
And you were probably dressed to go to a
I'm dressed like
meeting.
I am today.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure.
So, which is t-shirt and jeans. And I finally get, to wherever we were, at West LA or whatever, and I'm just fucking fuming. And we get in there, and it was a female. It was a woman producer. And she looks at the sizzle, and I'm going to paraphrase. It was something to the effect of, this thing won't make it past 3 episodes. I'm like, bitch, I'm going to beat your ass right now. I just sat in like 3-hour traffic to get here. But karma,
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yes.
266 episodes later. So I remember that one. I remember that one the most.
I got an inside scoop that apparently at one point, so AJ at the time of the pitching of all the pitch happening, AJ was out. He was out.
AJ was out. I don't know if he was my husband. Was he my husband yet? Was he? Okay. Andrew says yes.
Okay, Andrew says yes. Okay.
I have so many ex-husbands. I need to ask other people about them.
But there was one meeting, supposedly AJ came, and it sort of went a little sideways.
Was that the one when he went into the trailer and almost beat up one of our producers?
No. He came to a pitch.
I can't remember.
Apparently, when you're pitching a network that rhymes with A&E, sorry.
Okay.
AJ got a little uppity, and you had to remove him from the pitch, and you made him go sit in the car.
Yeah, he doesn't get uppity. He just gets he just got a little intense.
So, Rod, what is that like for you? I mean, 44 Blue is a buttoned up company. I mean, obviously, over the years, 44 has done a lot of edgy programming, but here you are trying to pitch this show, and at the time, not called Pit Bulls and Parolees yet.
Yeah.
Is it a weird experience? Is it like, oh yeah, this is going to be amazing?
No, it's not weird. It's like what we do. I mean, we basically take ideas and shape them, and then try to transfer them to a network that is, receptive to the, strengths and, potential. More than 3 episodes. Who would have thought? 19 seasons. So,
But Rasha, you already had Lockup under your belt, so I think the whole prison thing was kind of somewhat comfortable for 44 Blue.
Yeah, no. And from our perspective, we were comfortable in uncomfortable spaces, if that makes any sense,
sure.
Right? We could tell stories, and a lot of the shows that we've done over the years, kind of deal with it. So it was in the wheelhouse for us. It was just, how do you triangulate, great concept, great cast, wonderful story potential, expertise from a production company. Now we got to find the right buyer that gets this, right? That will support us and not to tell us, to make it different creatively. Like we want to go sell rock and roll and they're telling us to make, classical music. Like we wanted to make sure we found a partner that really got what Tia was doing. And so that was really the first speed bump, other than these pitch meetings, which were real adventures, was getting some traction at Animal Planet, because they got it. They initially got it. And, keep in mind, Animal Planet has changed who they are maybe a dozen times over the last 15, 20 years.
Right.
They're the fuzzy, cuddly network. They're the, survive whale, whatever.
Conservation or something, yeah.
Conservation. Right. They're going to be, so at the time, they were kind of warm and fuzzy. So the Underdogs concept was definitely counter-programming to what they were looking for. But I thought the title was fantastic because it did represent everything that Tia stood for. It was creative. They were the underdogs. The dogs are the underdogs, and all the rest. But the president of Animal Planet said, we got to call it what it is. So people who are tuning in and they look at that, back in the day, people actually used to look at the TV guide. They would see it and they would know what it is. And while the Underdogs is a good title, we don't know what they're underdogging. And she came up with Pit Bulls and Parolees, which now rolls off our tongue like it's.
It did not roll off my tongue back then.
Yeah. Okay.
But so I remember Tia's first reaction was,
yeah.
This is so Tia. Here's the thing. So
fuck no. But
so
okay.
Lots has been made. There's been a lot of discussion over the past 13 years about the title of the show, about Pit Bulls and Parolees.
Mm-hmm.
Here is your opportunity to air your grievances. What did you want the title to be? Rosh, and there were other titles in play. What were some of those?
Oh, I remember they were thinking like Tia's Rescue, and I'm like, what, are you crazy? Or Tia's Pit Bull Rescue, I think was another one.
But it was originally supposed to be the Underdogs spelled with a Z.
It was supposed to be the Underdogs, and that was DAWGZ, like dogs. Okay, so the Underdogs. And like Rasha said, it fit to what we felt like. And it was like a cool name. I'm visualizing t-shirts. And I remember the exact moment that I was told it was going to be Pit Bulls and Parolees. And I just said, you fucking just cursed us. Literally, we just got a total hex put over our lives. Because they didn't see it from my perspective when I'm trying to get donations. And I always tell everybody my honey baked ham story when it comes to that name. And it did not roll off nobody's tongue back then. Let me tell you something.
Oh no! When I got the job on the show, all my friends are like, "You're working on a show about pierogies."
I wish it would have been about pierogies.
dogs and Hungarian pasta.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was horrible trying to get donations and telling. First you tell people, "Oh, I have a show on Animal Planet." They're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing! What is it called?" And then I would try to dodge the question. I'd say, "Oh, it's about it's a dog rescue, and we help people that just need help." I don't even, and the dogs just help them. And they're like, "Oh, what's the name of it?" And I'm just like, "Oh, please don't make me say it." Yeah. So it's about pierogies. And so, oh my gosh, I hated it so much.
But here's the thing, in hindsight, so 13 years in, do you think Underdog spelled DAWGZ would have stood the test of time?
Yes.
Don't you think it would have become a little dated?
No, because it wasn't the name we were out there showing. It was our lives. It was our work. It's what we do. So, and the other thing too is I had a real issue with being on TV, and I didn't want my name. I didn't want it to be Tia anything. So I remember too, back then Animal Planet approached me and said, "Hey, we want to come out with some merchandise with your face on it." I said, "The fuck you are? I ain't putting my face on anything. I just wasn't I was so uncomfortable with it.
And wasn't the original intention of the show, you weren't supposed to be in it. Wasn't the original intention, it was supposed to be the dogs?
Yeah, I didn't want to be in it.
And it wasn't you and the kid. It wasn't you and the kids.
I didn't want to be in it at all.
Rosh, when did that change? Like, who made that flip? Like, how did that?
Day one. I mean,
it was day one. It was like, either you're in it or it's not happening.
I mean, anybody that spent any time around Tia, she's a force of nature. So when she's making those calls, or she's getting the calls on our rescue, and how she's thinking it through, or she's making the calls to, at the time, Tia was like doing like wearing many hats and spinning many plates. Like all roads led, like, dealing with her daughters and the twins, dealing with parolees, like, giving them the straight up, like, I'm going to give you a chance, but don't mess with us. Like this is a chance that'll change your life. You have to understand it. So all roads led to Tia. And that was like, our thing that was the most challenge. And it, some years were maybe more challenging than others, was, Tia's so busy. She's got so much going on. How do we get her to the stage? How do we get her to, the cameras? Because that's the show. The show was, a reluctant star, but starred no less. So.
I think my whole family was like that, because for the first 2 years, I don't know, maybe that's an Andrew question, but the first 2 years, like, the twins didn't even want to be on TV. We couldn't even get them on the camera, So it was, and then my daughters did it very reluctantly. Yeah, I think Mariah was the only one, probably because of her beauty pageant background, that she felt comfortable in front of a camera.
I mean, Rosh, that actually brings me to my next question, which was, once the show sold, there's been talk of this sort of legendary meeting that happened at Tia's place in her living room. It was you, a couple other guys from 44 Blue.
Stuart, Dave Hale, and I think Jeff Turner.
At the time. And so, Rosh, what was the purpose of that meeting? What was the reaction of the meeting? And I think there have been a couple of sort of legendary, you gave sort of very sage words of wisdom that have sort of rang true 13 years later.
I remember it. I remember it all.
Well, it was a reality check, because I think at the time there had been a pilot, and there's been some discussion about the show doing, they tested it, and, there was discussions by the network that they were going to go all in. And all in is a term for, multiple episodes. So not just like a trial or a test, but they're going to really commit to this. And the meeting really was really to kind of talk through with Tia, this is the reality of what's going to happen. And you need to understand that this is the world. It will change your life forever. And here it is, and it was, I think at the end, a very positive meeting, but, at the same sense, it was like, Tia, you need to think this over and make sure you're comfortable with it, because, media scrutiny, viewer scrutiny, and I'll never forget what Tia said to me. She goes, listen, here's the thing. When we cover what we do, it has to be 100% real. It cannot be second takes. It cannot be faking. And because there were some other Pitbull shows out there that were staged and just viewers could sniff it a mile away. So we kind of made a promise to each other at the time, which is like, look, I will protect, as a producer, the brand to the best of our ability. And Tia's whole question for us was, I'm not going to work on something that isn't 100% real. And that, decision, 13 years, 19 seasons, multiple awards. And I think it changed the whole viewer perspective on pit bulls, as a breed. Like, it's just no other show's ever done that. And as well as given so many viewers the heartwarming stories of not only the adoptions, but seeing, the parolees, who happen to become stars as well, overcome their issues when they were, younger, to actually flourish in their lives because of the program that Tia had. So it was a reality check, double pun intended, but it turned out really well.
And so, Rasha covered. Were there any other things? You mentioned you remembered something from the meeting. Did he cover it?
I think one of the biggest takes, or that I can take from that meeting was, and thank the gods above that Rasha said it. And I remember him saying, whatever you do not depend or rely on anybody, including production company, network, nothing, to bring in money for you. You need to keep control of your organization. You need to go out there and keep doing the pitches and the marketing and the PR to take care of your dog rescue. And I'll never forget that. You know, I didn't sit around and wait for anybody to, you know, do commercial, any kind of marketing for us or any fundraising.
Right.
And it saved us. It saved us.
Yeah. And then Raj, I mean, at the time, had there ever been a show? I mean, yes, Bulls and Parolees was unique and it was special and it was different and it was dangerous, but you were doing a reality show about a nonprofit dog rescue. I mean, I don't think there's ever been or ever was or ever has been a show that's focused on a nonprofit. I mean, was that
back then? No, but now, yeah.
But I mean, did you sort of realize what you were getting into as a company in terms of getting into business with a nonprofit?
Well, no. As we've joked over the years, you know, I don't know. We learned a lot about the rescue business, and in some cases, I think we've actually had to come to the rescue a few times because, you know, shit happens. You know, the dogs need to be safe. Number one. So whether you're in a dust area or in the weather issues of New Orleans, you know, we had to come up with solutions to help Tia, you know, which is air conditioners, certain types of properties, RVs, vehicles, and so on. So it was and you know, the cool thing is, I have to say this about Tia, is like, it was an unneeded dialogue that we had to have all the time. It's like, Tia, whatever you need, let us know, because we know it's real. Like, whatever you need, the dogs are being jeopardized in any way, how it is, the space you're living in, the kind of conditions you are, and so on. What can we do to help? Like security. Remember those days where the show becomes a hit?
Yeah.
Well, we predicted it. Guess what? The looky-loos are going to come from all over because they want to come meet, you know, Saint Tia. And so all of a sudden we have this issue about security. It's like, how do we keep Tia and the family safe?
Right.
Because, you know, some people take it too far. You know, they really push the envelope. So we had to figure out a security company to work it through. But in the end, I had no idea at the time when it first started that it would evolve into such a large thing. But at the same time, I think we were groundbreaking to do this kind of programming that nobody else had done.
Yeah. And then, so what was the overall reaction? I mean, Tia, like, for a while, you know, you guys did you did the first season. It happened. It aired, and you guys were like, okay, that was that. Was there a reaction to the first season? Did people start to recognize you guys? Was there any, you know, did you feel like, oh, this is we're on TV now? Like, was there any kind of notion in your mind that this was actually a thing, or was it like, oh, we just did it and that's it?
The moment I knew that we were a thing, and I don't remember what season, and we were still in California, so it had to have been one of the first three seasons. Okay.
Yeah.
I got asked to come to an animal shelter on Long Island. Okay, and they were going to have this little adoption day at the shelter, and the shelter was located like in some little suburbia, you know, kind of suburban neighborhood, you know. And we're driving. We get off the interstate. We start driving into the neighborhood, and I see cars just like me. It's like just cars parked everywhere, and there was a high school right there. And I said, "Oh yeah, they must be having a football game." There's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I mean, you couldn't even drive down the street.
It's May, but there's no football in May. But yeah,
whatever it was. And I see a bunch of police officers up ahead, and they're directing traffic. And I pull up in my hoopty van, and I say, "Excuse me, gosh, you got a big football game going on here." And the one cop looked at me and he goes, "Oh, you're Tia Torres." I said, "Oh yeah," and he goes, "No, this is for you." And I looked over, I was with Mikey D. I looked over at him and I started to cry, like scared. I'm like, oh, this is not what I had in mind, you know? And we finally got up to the shelter, and it was like a mob. We're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. They guesstimated at the time about 800 people at this little tiny animal shelter.
Wow.
And the police officers had to do like the with the arm locking thing to create like a chute for us to walk through, and people were reaching over and grabbing my hair, grabbing the back of my hoodie.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's when I said, okay, I guess people watch the show.
And Rosh, for you on the TV side and the business side, when did you kind of realize this, the show was a franchise and had potential to just go?
So, networks buy and air a lot of shows. It's the ones that do really well, from the fact that when they have these things called upfronts, it's basically launching the next season. When they pick out a show to feature in the upfronts, you have a hit because they have limited resources. Like they could put it on X show or Y show, but in this case, they put it on your show. Something is working because that's where they're going to funnel the resources. So I'll never forget. It was maybe season 2 or 3. The numbers were great, kind of like a hockey stick. That just people found the show and just were glued. Back in the day when cable had numbers, but that's another story. And so we get this call that says we want to feature. We do these upfronts in LA. We want to feature Tia in the upfronts and bring a dog on a stage. And this is where the media comes out and asks all these questions, like the next season of Pit Bulls and Parolees. And they wanted to do. They go, can you talk to Tia about doing media training, right? I'm like, media training?
We were just talking about that.
Because they go, the lens is going to be on her. Millions of people will see this. We just want to make sure she feels comfortable in the questions, and we want to teach her some tricks of the trade. I'm like, oh boy, this is going to go great. And I remember telling you, like, you come to Beverly Hills, it's like an hour session. They're just going to have some media types there. And it was like, oh my God. No, first of all, no one's training Tia to do anything. Like, she's the original deal. And,
well, she's a trainer. By trade, she's a trainer. So
they train politicians, they train movie stars, they do all this kind of stuff. And they realize in the first 10 minutes, like, okay, she's an original. There's no media training here. Go for it. And it was great because Tia went on stage with, one of the dogs. And it was like, I could tell right there. It's like this show has captured something. Like America, viewers have found an original series. It's not constructed, fake, written reality. This is as real as it gets. And, it's a pretty cool feeling as a producer because you put a lot of shows out there, but only the special ones, get a first, second, third, and in our case, 19th season. That's extremely rare.
So let's quickly talk about the move to New Orleans. So Rosh, you have a hit show. The show sort of reached momentum. We see getting into season 3, and Tia comes to you, and by this time I'm now running the show, and Tia and I have a good relationship, and I think I go to your office, Rosh, and I said, Tia's moving to New Orleans. What are we gonna do? Rosh, I mean, as the producer of the show that is basically at this point a hit, do you go, oh, that's a great idea, or is it just like, it'll be fine?
No, absolutely. You don't want to get in a trap as a producer of just putting the same show on all the time, right? The rinse and repeat effect of like, just send cameras out and it's going to be another season. Because audiences, will kind of, they'll catch wind like, okay, this is the same kind of thing going on. At the time, there was a potential move to another part of California.
Yeah.
Tehachapi.
Yep.
And it was a great, it was absolutely spot on to the messaging of the show that Tia was going to set up a rescue in Tehachapi. And
right next to a prison.
Right next to a prison.
Right next to a prison.
Yeah.
That was the only good thing about Tehachapi.
Yeah.
And the locals, as welcoming as you can imagine, pull the NIMBY card, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
And it was an incredibly emotional. Remember that?
The meeting.
That board meeting where you and the volunteers stood up to talk about it, and the neighbors could counter it by going like, well, we don't want Parolees, we don't want those pit bulls in our.
They might as well have had pitchforks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember being at that meeting. They might as well have had pitchforks.
But but not for nothing. When that didn't work, then someone dropped an airplane in our front yard and caught the whole forest on fire and burnt the place to the ground. So, I mean, that's what ended.
That's a story for a future podcast.
Well, but it wasn't. Yeah. I don't think we ever talked about it on an episode. We talked about because remember the 2 fires were going on at the same time.
You mean the third fire? The third fire, yes. So
Agua Dulce fire we have on our episode.
Right.
That same week, the Tehachapi place that we were moving to burnt to the ground.
We have that one too. And then there was the third one. That was the fire. That was the plane.
I don't know. All I know is an airplane dropped in my front yard.
That did happen. Yes.
Yes.
And that is a story for a future episode of Bulls Parolees.
So that's, and that is, and all of that is why we had to move to Louisiana.
Right.
Because we had nowhere to go.
So back to the original question. So Raj, okay, so you and I, so we're moving to New Orleans. He's like, I'm going. And we're like, okay, I guess we're going too. And you and I come to visit New Orleans. Tia's like, all right, here's where I'm moving the dogs, and here's my warehouse. What you said, a magical phrase to me, Raj, that was like, okay, it made me believe that everything was going to be okay. Do you remember what you said?
Nope.
Coat of paint, couple of plants, it'll all be fine.
Raj is such an optimist. Yeah. And it was a total shithole. This building had gone through Katrina. It had all the plumbing was plugged up with old shit and mud. No, I mean,
do you remember your office?
Rats fell out of the ceiling all the time.
No, but then your office, there was what ultimately you set up as your office originally.
It was my office bedroom.
And then, but also it had like caging for like people, like it was built a cage that they
for like ship. Yeah, where you put like packages and stuff like that to keep
for shipping. And we're like, okay, we can't film through caging. You know, it was like the craziest thing in the world. But Rasha said to me, he goes, pulled me aside. He's like, we'll get some plants, we'll get some paint. It'll be great.
That's so Rasha though.
Can I just say, Tia, I'm so glad you didn't pick like Des Moines or Lubbock or someplace. You picked New Orleans, which is one of the most amazing cities. So from a standpoint of a producer and like a new season, like it was a phenomenal move because it got to address the South and the dog issue there. It got to address, the locals who bring, the New Orleans people are as colorful and full of life as you can imagine. So it infused the series, still, true to its core of rescues, adoptions, and the family. But, oh my God, it was like times 10, how to handle, moving a family and at the time, maybe 150, 200 dogs across country and setting up in a new location. It just, the series, it took off even more.
And I also think that it also taught us as producers how to reinvent the show. Because I think over the course of the 19 seasons, we had to reinvent the show several times. I mean, obviously, when you moved to New Orleans, we had to reinvent how we made the show and how we do the show and how we had to relearn how to do, how we were making it. And then you say, we're comfortable in New Orleans.
But I'm not.
And you turn to us and you go, I'm going to move to the country. And at the time, you called it, I'm going to the swamp.
But you have to understand what a lot of people don't realize is that New Orleans was the first city that I had ever lived in.
Right.
In my life.
Right.
I'm born and raised a country girl. I'm a straight out redneck.
Right.
So, when I came here, we moved to New Orleans because it was the only place that would allow us to move there. What a lot of people don't know is before we moved to New Orleans, we didn't just say we're moving to New Orleans. We started calling around everywhere.
Right.
And going through the newspaper back then, we still had newspapers, trying to find a place that would take 150 pit bulls and a few criminals.
I mean, Little Rock was in the running for a minute, right?
Well, Arkansas. I was going to move to Arkansas, Homestead, Arkansas. And, when you're calling on properties and you say, oh, I'm calling about your place for rent. And, I have some dogs. Oh, you're a dog rescue. It's so sweet. What kind of dogs do you rescue? Oh, and we were here. Pierogies. It's like, so we couldn't find anywhere to move.
Right.
And then someone told me that, in New Orleans, pretty much it's the Wild Wild West. Anything goes. You can bring your dogs here. And so I had never lived in a city in my life up until that moment. So I lasted, I think a year and a half.
No, we got through season 6 before you bailed on the city.
Yeah. I mean, my overalls and my work boots got tired of walking around the streets in New Orleans, and then I found my place out in Assumption Parish.
Right. And then we had to reinvent the show again because it was like, how do we film a show with you an hour and a half away from where everyone else is? And
especially when when I didn't like being on TV still.
Yeah.
So
Rosh, jumping forward, just sort of as we wrap it up, I mean, are there, we've done so many episodes, so many stories. Are there any stories that for you that you've watched them and they stick out? I mean, I know they all blend together in the years, but is there anything that you remember? It's like, this was the show that you watched it, the rough cut, the final cut, whatever, saw it on TV, and you're just proud of the work we were doing.
So, I watch every episode that we ever produce, not only for Pit Bulls, but for any other show that I'm overseeing. So I see a lot of cuts, and a lot of times it's fairly straightforward, tighten the pacing, explain this more, move a graphic, it's kind of what a producer does. But having watched 250 plus episodes of Pit Bulls Parolees, I can't tell you a more emotional experience because certainly I know the storylines from our weekly meetings, and I certainly can hear when you call with an update like, oh my God, we had an amazing rescue or an amazing adoption, or obviously we would hear that. But when I see the cuts, and you remember the notes I would send. There were a number of times where I just would lose it emotionally. I think one of the stories is the dog that was reunited with the owner, and she had to go in for drug.
Cheryl and Roxy Mama.
Roxy Mama.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roxy Mama. And seeing your reaction, Tia, to that, because again, 100% real is what makes it so powerful. Seeing the dog become a different dog, and that's I don't think it gets more special than that to be able to do that type of thing. So yeah, my screenings were always very special because of stories like that.
Do you know Roxy Mama is still alive? She's 16 years old.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
We actually are going to try and get Cheryl on a future episode of Pit Bulls Parolees and Producer.
She's currently trying to put together her own grooming business.
And Tia, do you know Rasha gave a note on every single episode of the show? Do you know what that was?
All it needs is a couple of plants and some paint?
No. He would always... what question would you ask at the end of every single episode, Rasha? At the end of
Did the adoption stick?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're so vested. You want to know,
Yeah.
But
you're never going to get through this in 30 minutes. You know this. I mean,
No.
You are way past.
I'm over my limit, which is fine, but actually I'm going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So Rosh, thank you so much for joining us on our premiere episode of Pit Bulls and Parolees and a Producer. I am going to get tongue-tied with all the P's that we continue to say on this show, which is fine. Perfect. I'll get through it. So, Arash, I hope we'll invite you back as we break down every single episode of the series. We'll bring you back on for those particular episodes that are very memorable for you, for us, for the audience at home. And this will be one of many shows as part of Tia's Rabid Reality Network. So we hope that everybody at home continues to join us on this journey as we try and figure out the world of media and Rasha as our guide. Thank you, Rasha, for,
I'm going to remember that.
Showing us the way.
I'm going to get that t-shirt.
What?
A couple of plants and some paint.
Oh no, we did. By the way, no, there was there was a design for a t-shirt that was going to be the rap going to be the rap t-shirt that season. We just never made it.
All we need, that's my new go-to line. When things get shitty, just all we need is a couple of plants and some paint.
Rosh, thanks again.
Bye, Rasha.
Thank you.
Go back to your sunning on the beach.
All right, new episodes coming your way soon. Thank you.